You can imagine that 1/3 of the food that you eat is dependent on pollinators. So that's 1/3 of your plate which suddenly doesn't exist. And a lot of your favorite fruits and vegetables, your almond milk obviously you won't be seeing again. A lot of the clothes that we wear are actually indirectly a product of bees. And a lot of the animals that we eat, they feed on the plants that bees pollinate as well. So a world without bees is definitely gonna sting. Pardon the pun.
As we know, you can't just swipe away or brush away all the bacteria in your mouth. They start to come back very quickly. That's when they've started to implement things like chlorhexidine rinses, which work, to some degree, but really you're just putting an antiseptic in your mouth. But there's also issues with that because they do good things for your mouth as well. If we could address diseases of the mouth in a more precise way, we would have less downstream systemic problems. So if you were to treat gum disease, you would not have all of the problems that come downstream of gum disease.
Our culture wants to look amazing all the time. There's nothing wrong with that. That is expression, it's creative, it's a good thing. The problem is that companies are using materials that are not going to biodegrade, they're not going to be thrown away or disposed of in a responsible way. Oh, it's vegan, it must be good. That is such a fallacy. Plastics like PLA and PVC especially has been labeled by Greenpeace to be the single most environmentally damaging plastic. The methods used to create these plastics is toxic. It can take up to 500 years for that piece of plastic to sort of break into its components. That means it's sitting in a landfill, and that essentially means that you're wearing a big trash bag.
So there's no test for us to determine what elicits a non-IgE-mediated response. The only way to test it is to give the person the food and see if they react to it, which is egregious on many different levels, but also adds an entirely different level of difficulty when you're not giving it to the baby directly, you're giving it to mom, and mom is transferring it to her breast milk for we don't know how long. The true empowerment could come from the ability to just tell mom what's in her breast at any given moment. Give mom an ingredient deck for the boob.
Cow's milk, as the only source of nutrition, is species specific. So why we still giving cow's milk for human babies? That doesn't make sense at all. Precision fermentation or protein forming, all of those technologies are very safe and well known. What we're doing is just moving from the pharmaceutical world to the food space. This type of technology can also help us not only to get those proteins and breast milk compounds, but we can do that in a way that's cost-efficient way.
It's very shocking to imagine there is a place in the ocean where nothing else can live due to our pollution, right? What if we could recycle that? What if we could take those nitrogen and phosphorus from the water in a solid way and put it back in the land? Or even better, like producing something that we can use to feed the world. And when you look at what is the biggest challenge to grow this amazing plant-based food, there are two main components. One is taste. Of course, we all want to eat delicious food. And the second one is texture. And it turns out lemna is a magnificent ingredient for texture.
Glow sticks are made of a few different things. There's the outer casing, which is usually a plastic. Then on the inner, there is some chemicals. And so when you crack open a glow stick, the activator responds with the other chemicals and the dye, and that is what creates the colored glow. One of the main industrial uses of glow sticks is fishing as a fishing lure. And so thousands are used every day to lure fishing into these fishing nets. And almost all of those, usually end up entering into our oceans and then wash up on the beaches. There are many side reactions that continue to go even after the light has been kind of dimmed. And the chemicals inside actually become more toxic over time.
Yeah, so oil is currently quite cheap, which means that we can manufacture products very cheaply from oil. But the problem is that it becomes environmentally unsustainable to keep extracting products, use them, and then discard them. So by just discarding them after a single use, all that capital we put in will be lost. If we can instead find a way to convert that plastic into something useful, we're closing the loop in the circular economy of plastics, and the plastic will be recycled into the economy again.
What's interesting about the skin is that it's like a landscape. In every different area of the body it's slightly different, and that's because of the environment that it's been adapted to. In a really polluted city, we're seeing that there's a correlation between pollution in your city and skin health, and that skin health is manifesting in skin conditions. Nature and nurture clearly make up, the health of the individual, so bringing two halves of the coin together, we really have a more comprehensive understanding of your skin. If you look at most products out there, they're very generic, they're off the shelf, they're not tailored for the individual. So we really need targeted approaches that look at bacteria, viruses, and fungus individually.
Traditionally, stem cells are transported in a frozen state. The downside is that when you receive a frozen vial, you then have to thaw that out. You have to then revive those cells. That revival process kills a bunch of cells. So you lose a lot of cells in transport. If you want to provide cells that can be directly used for therapy without additional labor, without loss of cells, you really do have to do this in a warm state. What bioreactors can do, if you build them well, is maintain the sterile environment the entire lifetime of an experiment or a cell culture procedure.